Hello, YouTube land. This is Brent and Son coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Before we start the show today, I'd like to say that if anyone has any story that is mysterious or any story about an encounter with a cryptid like Dogman, Bigfoot, anything that's in the cryptid genre or even the supernatural genre, you can give me a message on Gmail at brentandson@gmail.com. You can talk to me in private or possibly have a pre-interview and come on and tell the story yourself. I like it best that way. But today, I had this lady send me a message from Texas. And I had made a video about the infrasound in the 411 subject here a while back. And this story that this lady has, her and her husband, is very fascinating, and you're going to see here in a minute why. But it's a little bit more proof to add to the infrasound topic and with Bigfoot here. So anyway, this lady is from Texas. Her name is Sherry. And we're just going to call her Sherry and refer to her husband as her husband. So kick back and enjoy the show. I think you're really going to like this. Anyway, Sherry, how you doing today?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing wonderful, and I really enjoyed the time we've had here talking today. And fascinating stuff that we've been talking about. And I just love Texas. Texas is the best state that I ever lived in my opinion. But a little bit too hot for me, and the bugs and stuff and snakes and all that stuff are a little bit too big. Everything is bigger in Texas, even the bugs. And that's a fact, man. But anyway.
That's interesting to brought up the bugs.
Yeah, no, I just let the fans here know that I used to live in Texas, and I'm telling you that the brown recluses, the rattlesnakes, the huge foot-long centipedes, the scorpions, tarantulas, oh my goodness, there's a lot of stuff. And also there's Bigfoot and Dogman stories coming out of Texas quite frequently, and Sherry has a very interesting story for us. And if you would, Sherry, let's just start with giving a background on you and your husband and where you live, and whatever you feel is pertinent to the encounter that you had and information you're going to share.
Well, I'll start out by saying we live in West Texas, up around Midland, Odessa. I'll say that I'm an outdoors person. I've raised horses most of my life, and I was always the one that'd go outside to see what was going on in the middle of the night, so I'm not scared of just a whole lot. Rode horses all my life. When I was a young kid, I fished a lot with my dad and my brother at Spence Lake and different lakes, so camping out in a tent or sleeping by a river fishing is nothing new to me. I did it a lot. I grew up fishing. So when this happened to us down in South Texas, it was quite a surprise. I guess I could describe it as being very surreal because I definitely was never expecting it to happen. But anyway, do you want me to just go ahead and tell them what happened, or?
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the what the land is like, because I think a lot of people don't realize how vast Texas is, and you have several different kind of you have some places that are more deserty like, you have some places more wooded like, and if you can give us kind of a little bit of description on the like the woods and the flora, the fauna, and things like that are in your area.
Okay, well, where we live, it's just flat, mesquite, sand, jackrabbits, bull snakes, rattlesnakes, king snakes. It's pretty wide open. You can see for 20 miles. But where this happened is down south of Junction, Texas, about 7 miles. and it's I would call it mountainous. Everybody else, I guess, calls them hills, but being from West Texas, I call them mountains. Very thick brush. You got the North Llano River, the South Llano River, and normally herds and herds and herds of deer. I mean, you can be sitting on the side of the road and have a herd of deer looking at you, wondering why you're sitting there. I mean, it was just that many deer were down there.
Right.
Well, the year before this happened, this particular event happened, or maybe the winter before, I never was sure exactly when, we had the drought, and on the west side of the road, they had a wildfire go through in there, and it burned out a lot of the brush. And down there where we used to fish every year, on that particular area that used to be so thick, well, it burned out through there. So you could see around in that area. Now, it's strange, because that was the east side of the road, not the west. Okay, the west side was burned out, the east side wasn't burned out. And that's kind of important to this.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
Now you gave a little bit of a build up to your encounter with, we were talking about a Bigfoot that was laying in the road on a previous video that I had made with the guy from New York. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about the build up?
I'm going to get ahead of myself. I'm just going to go ahead and get into this and just tell you what happened from the beginning.
All right.
We had always fished in that area. Every year, especially on Easter, we'd go down there. But it was our favorite fishing spot. South of Junction, past the state park, there's two places where the road crosses the Llano River, and the furthest one down is where we would catch our perch. We'd go down there to catch the big yellowcat catfish because they're in there, big ones. So we would always go down there in the evening, and we'd catch our perch, and then we'd go up to the crossing about a mile up the road closer to Junction, and we'd just stay there and fish most of the night, and just using perch, we'd catch huge yellowcat fish out of there, or we'd lose our poles, whichever came first. Well, this particular time, and I've got to back up a little, we started in there probably about 5 o'clock, and I had been telling my husband, where's the deer? And this is important, because there was always lots of deer in this area, and I kept saying, where's the deer? There's no wildlife, there's no deer, where'd they go? And we thought, well, maybe it was because the land on the west side had burned out. So we went on down there, and we're going to catch our perch where we usually catch them down in there, and it was open. You could see around you now because of the fire that had gone through. And he's fishing to my left, and I'm about 20 or 30 feet to his right. And we're catching perch for our bait like we've done every year, same place we've always fished. And this rock comes flying at us. I mean, it was probably the size of both of my hands spread out, put together. Just comes flying out of nowhere and lands on the ground in between us. Just broad daylight, this rock comes flying at us.
Wow.
And we just looked at each other like, what was that about? You know, first thing we thought was maybe a person threw it. We're looking around, and since the brush is burned out and the foliage, you know, you could see around, and there wasn't anybody anywhere close to us. They were way up on the other side of the river. And so I'm looking around. I thought, well, you know, what do you do? So we kept on fishing. We kept catching our perch, and we finally loaded up enough perch. We thought we were good. So we drive up. You know, we loaded up, and we drove up the road up to the other crossing where we always sit down to fish. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. I've never gone on a tow list before. But anyways, we get all set out to fish, and we got everything set up. So first, And this was really odd. I've never had a game warden come to us to check fishing licenses on a river before. At that crossing or any, I mean, I've had them check me at a lake, and then they want to look at your boat and make sure you're not hiding any fish, and they check your license and all that, and they leave.
Right.
They don't want to sit there and carry on a conversation with you. They go on about their business. But not this day and not this guy. So, you know, you were talking about the bugs in Texas. Well, by the time he got there, there was just little gnat bugs, clouds of them everywhere.
Yeah.
And he wants to check our fishing license, so he checks mine. And the bugs are just bothering him so bad, he's about to choke on them. And he doesn't even want to look at my husband's fishing license. And I'm sitting there thinking, I can't believe I have a game warden sitting here checking our fishing license on the side of a river. Out here, this never happened. And then after that, he says the strangest thing. He starts asking us how long we're going to be there. And I thought, well, now, first he shows up. That's weird. Number two, he's, done check my husband's license. Number three, now he wants to know how long we're going to be here. I'm like, boy, this is really getting weird. So, we don't know. Whenever we get tired, we'll head back to Junction. So he's like, okay. And he leaves. I thought it was strange, but I don't know. We just went ahead and did our fishing. We were starting to fish. Well, about 15 or 20 minutes after he leaves, this young couple drives up. And I guess they were going to fish there too and would beat them to the spot. Well, then they decide they want to strike up a conversation. And I'm thinking, man, I've never been so popular at this place before. What's going on? So they're talking to us, and my husband and I were still kind of thinking earlier about that rock that was thrown at us, and we kind of mentioned, I think we mentioned that to them. And so they start talking about their grandfather used to fish there a long time ago. And they were talking about it. They didn't really elaborate, but they kept saying how strange things happened to them, to their grandfather. And then they mentioned something about one night he was driving up there and somebody was laying across the road out in the middle of the road.
Wow.
And, that kind of relates back to that other story you were telling me about that dog man.
Right.
But they didn't elaborate about that either. They didn't say what happened or who it was. They didn't really go into that. So anyways, I guess they finally decided we weren't going to leave, and they left. And we settled down to fishing. And in that particular spot, when you fish there, the Llano River is going under that bridge through these these big round metal things, kind of like for floods. Yeah. And it's rushing through there, and it's really loud, so it's kind of hard to hear.
Right.
But this is a great fishing spot. And so the fish weren't biting, and we just kept fishing. We just hung around and fished, and sun went down, and we just kept fishing, and I think my pole slid a few times, nothing serious. They really weren't biting. And my husband, we're going along there, probably about 10 o'clock that night. He said, don't worry about it. He said, the moon hasn't come up yet. When the moon comes up, the river comes to life.
Yeah.
He had no idea how prophetic that statement was. Because boy, did it ever.
Yeah.
So anyways, we kept fishing, and I kept waiting for the moon to come up, and they weren't biting, and directly, finally, it's getting late, starting to cool off, the breeze was picking up a little bit, and the moon came up, and I'm still waiting for those fish to bite. They're not really biting. And I'm still saying, there's no wildlife. You're not hearing birds. There's nothing. And it was just so unlike this area.
Yeah.
We talked about how strange it was about the game warden checking the fishing license, and we never see a game warden out there. And then we talked about that couple and this, how strangely they acted.
Yeah,
And
I don't want. I don't want to interrupt, but I want to say something about the deer thing and why you're saying that is odd that you didn't see the deer. There's a place like that here in Kentucky where I'm living at now. I used to live down in Texas, but where Cumberland Lake is at, and the deer are just in huge populations. You'll see just herds and herds of deer, and when you go down there, you're gonna see deer. So I can relate to what you're saying. There was something very, very odd about seeing no deer. So that's significant, and I just want the listeners to know that what you're saying really does matter. That the no wildlife, the no deer and things like that is a very odd thing to have happen in an area like that where the deer population is so big. So anyway, continue on. Sorry about that.
Well, just to reiterate how important that is, a few years before that, his daughter was down there fishing with us, and we kind of got separated, and I was fishing at the crossing, and they had gone through the brush to another part of the river, and this was close to dusk, and they were fishing, and this was before we were married, and he forgot about me. He thought I was down there fishing. He had the truck keys, and it was getting dark, so I walked back up to the truck, and it's parked with a boat behind it, and it's right next to the road, and he's down there fishing with his daughter, and I'm sitting there waiting for them to come up, so because it's getting dark. And every time a vehicle would go by, I'd kind of duck because I didn't want anybody to know I was there by myself with them down there fishing. Yeah. And I turned around, and I had a herd of deer back there staring at me. I mean, like they felt sorry for me, this poor woman. They're looking at me like, what are you doing by yourself by the truck? It's that many deer.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of deer.
Right.
So that night, now it gets interesting because for some reason, and I don't know why, whenever anything's fixing to happen, I always seem to already know somehow, and I get in the truck. To the point where my husband, now, if I go up and abruptly go get in the truck, he's wondering what's fixing to happen. Yeah. So anyways, I get tired and it's a little chilly, and I'm like, I'm going to go get in the truck. So I go get in this 2005 Nissan Titan that's sitting there on the concrete side. Anybody at Junction hears this, they know where I'm talking about. Mm. So I'm in the truck on the side of that river, on the road, on the concrete, and I've got my iPhone, and I'm on eBay. I'm just, kind of goofing around looking on eBay. The fish weren't biting, I'm bored. And the back, my back in the truck back is towards the south. And my husband's still down there on the concrete fishing. All of our equipment is down there. The moon has come up. There's still no wildlife. And if you ever hear one of these things go off on you, you will never forget it. I'm sitting there, windows rolled up, and this thing lets off a screaming howl, trumpet, kind of low to high, horrendous scream, yell at us, and it is so, to describe it is, it's so hard because I've never heard anything like this. And I mean, it's just enough to feather your hair, and that thing just lets that thing off at us. And he's still down there, and I'm sitting there on eBay on my iPhone, and I'm like, what in the heck was that? What was that? And I'm looking around, and it's pitch dark, and the moon is up, and I could only describe it as surreal, because you know what you heard. It's unmistakable you heard it, but you can't believe you heard it. Yeah. And while you're wrapping your head around what you just heard, it goes off again. A little louder, which it's hard to believe this thing could get louder than that. I mean, it was like something coming out of football stadium speakers. And this thing it wasn't talking to another one. It sounded like it was mad and like it was saying, "You get out of my fishing hole," kind of. This thing was going off on me.
Wow.
So after the second one went off, it goes, oh, just horrendous, boy. Just, you couldn't imagine. And then my husband stands up and he starts walking to the truck. Well, he's down lower. Now, I had pictures of this area at one time. He's down lower, and as he's walking towards the truck, as there's a concrete wall that you have to come up around the edge, and then you come up. And as his head cleared above that concrete, where that thing way to the south of us could see him, oh man, you think the first two of them were loud? That third one thundered like even worse. And you could hear it just echoing down through the canyons of that river. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding. I look in the rearview mirror, I don't see anything. The most horrendous act kind of goes, oh, just screaming, but it's got these trills in it and kind of like it talks in the middle of it. I mean, it's just going off on him. And my husband gets up to the truck and he opens up the truck door and he looks in and he goes, "Did you hear that?" I was like, "Yeah, I heard that." What? And he gets in the truck. Now, this is the interesting part. He gets in the truck, locks the doors, and he says, I'm so drained from that. I can't stay awake. He said, "I can't drive us out. I'm too shook up." He goes to sleep.
Wow.
That is the part I have trouble with. That is the part where I've been scratching my head trying to figure out, how could you, in the middle of this, with all the adrenaline and this thing going, how do you go to sleep? He's out. That's it. And I'm sitting there in the dark, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't know what time, out there about 7 miles south of the junction with this thing that's, I don't know how far behind us. It's already let off 3 of the most horrendous screams you could ever hear at us. And believe me, it wasn't a barred owl. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't an axis deer. I've tried to tell people about this scream. They tell me those things. You're not even anywhere close. You're not even in the same state with this thing. That's how far off that is.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there, and I'm it's almost like basically being in the truck by myself. He's out. And I'm looking around, and there's the moon, and I'm thinking, if I see the silhouette, man, please God, I do not want to see this thing. And thankfully I didn't, but I didn't get out of the truck. I've never had my husband get in the truck and lock the doors. This man's a hunter. He's a fisherman. He is not the indoors type. We're both fishermen. We're both outdoors type. We're not the kind to get in the truck and lock the doors. But I couldn't understand why or how he could go to sleep, and that's why I contacted you, because I heard about the infrasound and the 411. My husband and I have talked about this so many times since that happened, and I get worked up about it. He gets a lot more worked up about it because I was in the truck when it happened. He was outside. He says, if I can remember every way, he said it was like it was throwing its voice at him, trying to knock him down. He said he felt the percussion hit his chest, like it was trying to go through him and knock him down. He said that third one sounded like that thing was running down the mountain at him, the way the voice was coming at him. I asked him because I heard that one man say that it heated him up on the inside. He doesn't recall the heat, but he recalls the vibration, the percussion, the way it sounded like it was trying to knock him off his feet.
Yeah.
And that's the way he always describes it.
So you basically ran across that video on 411 infrasound on the Bigfoot topic that I had made. So when you watched that video, um, it it's basically struck a chord to help. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, because they were saying how it kind of hypnotized them. Some of those people in 411 that go missing, that
Yeah.
they take their clothes off and fold them up. And they said, this one man said the reason he did that was because he was so hot when those
Yeah.
infra sounds hit him.
Right.
I could relate with that. I mean, he didn't do anything like that, but it kind of like it hit. It was almost like a hypnosis. I mean, it knocked him out.
Yeah.
I could see, how something, then could come in and carry you off, because they say these people they're gone 1 minute, and then, they're there 1 minute and then they're gone the next.
Right.
Or these little kids find themselves on the other side of a mountain, and they don't know how they got there.
Right. Now the other story that I had in that particular video that you watched was from Steve Bledsoe from Oklahoma, so not too terribly far from where you are, but he got hit with an infrasound thing that started out sounding like a bunch of bees, and it was a droning thing. So that the tactic that the thing used on him was, he said it was luring him into like a trance state, and he was hearing this buzzing, and it was like wah, wah, wah. But he said it sounded like a bunch of bees going up and down, droning kind of thing. And then it was almost as if it was putting him into a hypnotic trance-like state. And he at one point he said he kind of noticed it, and he looked over at his little brother, and he's like, "Do you hear that?" And when he said that, the thing roared at him, and he described the kind of thing that you're describing. It was so horribly loud. So the lung capacity, the vocal cords, it's just it's beyond anything a human or an animal of any known type can do. And
exactly. And you mentioned on there about someone did an autopsy on a Bigfoot and the extra set of vocal cords. That's really interesting, because we were talking about how unworldly this thing sounded like. We've never heard anything that could match this.
Right.
Or even get in the ballpark with the way this thing roared at us.
Right.
You could not need to try to express to somebody what it was like, and the vibration in the air. I mean, I was in the truck when it hit me. Like, my husband, you think I get upset telling this? You ought to hear him. He gets really upset because he was outside. He said I didn't hear half of what he heard.
Yeah.
It was tremendous. Yeah, that extra set of vocal cords and the way y'all were describing, what you were talking about, and you could explain it better than me. I can relate, definitely.
Yeah. Well, one of the theories out there is that after the Melba Ketchum DNA, and then there's another project, I think it was a Scoochum or something like that project, they did a DNA study too, where they collected the DNA and what have you, had it analyzed. It turned out to be mitochondrial DNA was human female, which is the mother side with mitochondrial part, and then the nuclear DNA, which would be the father side, was unknown. So some people theorize that it is similar to the Genesis 6 thing, where an angelic type being, which there's all kinds in the Bible, given descriptions of kinds that have bird heads, kinds that have a bull type head. There's all different types of creatures that look, you can look at the beasts that are before the throne and stuff like that. But anyway, so if it's an angelic thing mixed with a human female, then there would be traits from the father, the nuclear DNA. So I got to thinking about when the Bible describes Lucifer and his pipes and timbrels, is talking about his vocal cords. They were fearfully and wonderfully made, and they were just some type of magnificent vocal system that was on this cherub. And so when you look in the scriptures about when people were smote with blindness or smote with madness, and different times where angelic beings hit a person or a group of people with a sound and some type of sound, it did different things to them. It sometimes made them mad into madness, or forget maybe, or not even remember what the heck happened. Sometimes it wearied them to where they were physically partially paralyzed and they couldn't hardly get to the door or something like that. So pondering that, if an angelic being had a different kind of vocal cord system and crossed with and made this Bigfoot that, like in Genesis 6, then it would have some extra ability. And one of the reasons I think that is something having to do with the vocal system of these creatures, if Genesis 6 thing is the theory that would fit, is because in the beginning of the Bible, where it says that God placed a cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life, right? When you look at that in the Hebrew, it says that God placed a cherubim and a flaming sword. He doesn't say he placed a cherubim with a flaming sword. So the flaming sword is separate from the cherubim. And the word flaming sword, if you look that up in the Hebrew, it actually means enchantment. And the only other time that I could find it in the Bible was when the Pharaoh had his magicians come out and throw their staffs down. When Moses threw his down, his magicians came out and threw theirs down, and they turned into snakes. There was some type of enchantment, which implies that it's something audible, something vocal. So I think that these creatures have some ability to make vocalizations that can affect people in different kinds of ways. And with your particular case, he got hit with this infrasound, and it made him basically, it disabled him to the point where he went to sleep. When you heard the three vocalizations, the first vocalization was really loud, but they got louder. So do you think that this was one creature, or do you think that this creature basically howled and then came closer, howled and came closer and howled, that it was coming closer as it was doing this?
I don't know. I know my husband said the third one sounded like it was running towards us. That's what he said.
Okay.
I just know that it got louder. Each one got louder. The first one, and then the second was louder, and then the third one was just off the charts loud. It was apparently I'm thinking like it was going down there to fish where we were fishing, since all the deer were gone, and the deer were gone because of the drought and because of that fire. And I have studied since then. There's two rivers further south that converge to form the Llano that comes through there, and there are a lot of Bigfoot down in that area.
Do you think it's possible?
It to happen to us, but what I would like to say is that if you go into an area that normally has a lot of deer, and you notice that the deer are gone, I wouldn't stay too late.
Yeah.
If you have them thrown at you, you might just take it and go home.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe
that warning that I wanted to say that game warden knew that thing was there. Why did he come in there?
Right.
To check our lot, and then to ask us how late we were going to be there. So yeah, that game warden knew that thing was there.
Yeah. So do you think that the deer were not in the area because the Bigfoot were? Is that what you're thinking?
I think that the deer were gone because of the Bigfoot, and the deer also maybe because of the drought, but also because of the Bigfoot. I mean, there wasn't any deer. There wasn't one deer.
Right.
There wasn't a possum. There was nothing. Nothing. Yeah. And that only one side of that road was burned out. the other side off, everything was still there. But all the wildlife, that area before this was always just teeming with wildlife, and there was nothing. They were gone.
Right. Yeah.
And I haven't been back down there since. I don't know what it looks like now. During the day, people float through there on rafts and stuff, and they party in there. But I guarantee you, come 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, if I were you, I wouldn't be there.
Right.
And that game warden, I wish they would just come out and be honest and say, hey, you know, we've got a hairy man or a Bigfoot in here, you know.
Right.
Or, you know, they just need to tell people, don't let it, that thing could have killed us.
Yeah. I mean, it threw rocks at you.
People have been killed, they don't say anything.
Right. Well, now, it threw a big, you're saying, how big was the rock that it threw at you? Can you tell me that again?
If you take both your hands, spread your fingers and your thumbs out, and put them together, it's that big.
So it was basically a decent-sized boulder, and
it wasn't a pebble. It was a big rock, and it came flying out of from in front of us, and there's all of that was clear up there. We couldn't see anything that would have thrown it at us. And you can look up to the cliff, and then there's flat land up there. But to this day, I don't know
where he threw it from.
Yeah. Even if somebody had been standing on the other side of that river, I don't think a person could have thrown that rock that far. I think it's physically be impossible. It didn't drop out of thin air.
I mean, if it was as big as two of my hands put together, that's a big rock. I mean, that's a boulder. That's not a rock. I mean, I got some big hands. That would be, I'm not sure how big my hands are, but both of them together is at least a foot and a half almost, you know. But, I mean, I wear a size 14 shoe. But
10 to 12 inches, about 12 inches.
Okay, so that's a big rock. No one could throw a rock that big unless you were just some Olympian. So it's possible, basically, what I'm asking is that it threw it from a pretty good distance, but he was already in the area to do it. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So that Sasquatch was there watching you. That's what makes me wonder about the sound getting louder. Is it how far was he when he threw that rock, and then did he come closer, or was there more than one? That's quite interesting.
Well, that happened about 2 hours before sundown. We were at the second crossing catching our perch.
Okay.
When that happened.
And so how many hours total between the rock throwing and all the way to the sound roaring?
Okay, so if I would say maybe 5 o'clock when they threw the rock to about, I'm estimating maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. What is that? 7, 8 hours? Is that about 8 hours?
Yeah, till 1 o'clock. Yeah, that's 8 hours. So that's so it had to have been in the area watching you all for a good while. I mean, unless it left or something like that. So you're thinking too. When I told you the story of the Bigfoot that was laying in the road in that story in New York, and believe me, I've collected other stories too where people run across a Bigfoot that was laying in the road. Now, the story I told you about, I think it was laying there because it was stalking the farm animals that were, across the road there. But you're saying that some people were telling you of an encounter with some type cryptid that was laying in the road that was basically
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So there, you know that there's been activity that's been odd and strange. And did they say that strange stuff happened?
You know when somebody's telling you about how something happened, story, but they're not sure how much is it to tell you because they're not sure you're going to believe them. So
Right.
that's what it was like when they were telling us about their grandfather. Like they were alluding, to strange things and saying strange things that he said had happened, but they wouldn't say exactly what because they were afraid that we wouldn't believe them.
Yeah.
And when they were talking about the grandfather saying somebody was laying in the road, they didn't talk about, well, it was somebody that was dead and they called the police or blah, blah, blah. But they were alluding to its strangeness, but they wouldn't elaborate. It's like they were afraid to tell us exactly what, because we're an older couple, and you could tell that they were afraid that we wouldn't believe them. It was like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you. I mean, if it was a person,
the strangeness of the conversation, alluding to where this area is strange thing, and saying in this area strange things happen, and strange things happen to their grandfather, and they were alluding, and they were going in that direction.
I think they were maybe hoping you would volunteer something that you had happen. But basically when someone's wanting to tell you something, they'll start out like that, giving you a little bit and saying strange things happen.
Yeah.
And most of the time someone will tell you something strange that happened to them, and then it opens the door to talk more about it. But they wouldn't tell you about a guy laying in the road.
They didn't stay that long, and then they left.
Right. I don't think the grandfather would have ever passed that story down about a man laying in the road. They were telling you something was laying in the road, and it was shaped like a man.
It looked like a man, but they would not come out and be precise. And we tried to get them to tell us, because we were kind of wondering, because we already had that rock thrown at us, and we were kind of, trying to get them to tell us, what was in the road. Tell us the strange stories your grandfather told you.
Right.
But they would kind of evade it a little bit, and they wouldn't. And I wish so much that they would have, because we want to know what are you trying to tell us?
Right.
But they were young, and they just weren't too sure about whether they were going to go that far and be honest and tell us, and they wouldn't do it.
Right. Maybe if you had it to do over again, you probably could have told them something that would have made them feel comfortable. Say, look, I've had an encounter with and they probably would have opened up then, but you didn't know, and you all hadn't had your encounter yet either. So,
but we were getting more and more. I should have been more suspicious when the rock came flying through. I know that. I kept telling him that night, don't you think that's strange? A game warden checked our fishing license on the side of a river? It wasn't even hunting season. Why is a game warden out there? He's out there at dusk, and then he's asking us, how long are you going to be here?
Yeah.
And I had never forgotten that. And I had his name. When we got back to camp, finally, after all this was over, and we felt like the coast was clear after he woke up, we got our gear, went back to camp. First thing I did, I pulled up the BFRO, and I submitted a report, which I never heard back from them. Next thing I did, I stayed online on my phone with my earplugs till 4 or 5 in the morning, listening to every sound imaginable. I listened to every critter I could find on the internet, trying to locate that sound that I heard. And the only thing that came close to it was the Sierra sound.
Okay.
That's when I started finding all these vocalizations about Bigfoot.
Well, the Sierra sounds, aren't those the one that sound kind of like Japanese?
Do what?
I think there's some Sierra sounds that sound, they may be different ones, that you basically found a sound that had that long howl call.
Yeah.
Okay.
That upward sound.
Okay. Was there any kind of, when it was making this long howl, going low to high like it does, was there any like verbalizations in the midst of it? Like every once in a while, like a blah, blah, blah,
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought I heard you say that, but so
I'm trying to remember that, and it would be trying to remember another language. It was almost like gibberish in the middle of it. I mean, this thing is almost like getting cussed out in gibberish by Bigfoot. This thing was mad. I hear I hear vocalizations on YouTube, and they're like, yeah, here's another one of those plain old sounds, and I hear so many of those. I'm like, man, y'all haven't heard a mad one yet. This thing was mad.
So he basically howled and then gave that blah, 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 and then howled. It finished the howl.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but
that's
it
incredible.
Magnify that 100,000 times, and you're in there.
Yeah, that's incredible. What caused you all to dismiss a foot-wide, huge 20-pound boulder being thrown at you? I mean, if a rock like that big is thrown, so how far did it land from you?
It was probably about 6 feet from me and about 6 feet from my husband. So about maybe further than that, 7 feet. It was in between us. It was
close.
Through it.
Yeah.
It landed apparently where they wanted it, because it was about even between us.
Did it land with a thud, or did it land with a little bit of a skip? A thud and a skip.
It was definitely a thud.
Just basically sunk like pows and stayed still.
Pow.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
so that meant it had.
Pow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I saw it coming out of the corner. I'm sitting there fishing for perch. I'm watching the tip of my pole. I'm not looking in the air. I saw it coming out of the corner of my eye. I saw the movement, out of the corner of my eye, and then the pow.
Okay. Well, then that means it had a lot of arch on it. This thing threw it from a distance. From out of was there like woods and stuff on the other side?
Yes, it's trees over there, and then because this is a creek bottom. So yeah, and it slopes up to the land way up there, probably about 50 feet up. So it could have very easily been up there and thrown it. It might have a cave back in there. I don't know. We never figured that out.
Okay, well,
we were looking around trying to figure out where it came from.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking is because I've known of a few other stories where the guy actually caught the rock or whatever it was being thrown on camera, and of course he didn't catch anything as big as what you had thrown at you, but decent sized rocks and stuff. And when you went back and you looked and analyzed it, the arc basically coming down through the tree, so it was quite a distance back, and it would throw it high, way high, so that it would come down in the midst of the trees and hit near the sky. And the thing was, the Bigfoot was so good at throwing these rocks, he could be accurate doing that. So when they throw a rock, they can actually hit near you on purpose. And they can hit you on purpose. And as a matter of fact, I have an interview I'm going to do this evening with someone who had a really bad Bigfoot encounter, and someone that she knows has had some encounters too. And when one of these people actually watched a Bigfoot hunt a rabbit and kill a rabbit with a rock. It spotted the rabbit, and he threw the rock, killed the rabbit, and it went over and got it. So they're very, very good with throwing rocks. So I believe that if it thudded and it didn't skip, it didn't hit and bounce, because if it was bouncing, it would be thrown more straight, at a straighter trajectory. But it seems like it was back in the woods, and it threw it at a very, very high arc and pinpointed it right there between you all. So this rock lands between you all, kind of even split.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's
And
incredible.
I have to apologize for sounding upset, but it's hard to tell this story without reliving it and getting the adrenaline rush again.
Right.
Because it was a rush, but, you know, you asked, why didn't we get up and leave right then when that rock was thrown?
Yeah.
We don't get run out of a fishing hole that easily.
Yeah, but
you have to get a little more closer with that rock to run me off. I'm catching perch. I got a yellow cat hole waiting on me. Yeah. I went down there for a purpose, and that was to go fishing.
Yeah.
And I'm a long way from home, and I'm going fishing.
Well, I understand. It's amazing what humans will let pass. But but when you think back on it, if a huge boulder, a foot wide boulder that probably weighs 10, 15, 20 pounds, I don't really know how much it weighs, but that's a big rock. If a big rock lands between you, like that, 6 feet from you, really, if you were to think about it, you can't just dismiss that. Someone threw that. That came from somewhere. For you to sit there and keep fishing, that's amazing.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and then it just got more interesting and went downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever thought about that? Why you all didn't say, okay, we got to get to the bottom of why this rock just landed here. Who the heck threw this?
What are you going to do? Put your pole down and go walking all over that place?
No, I know.
Go get in your truck and leave and say, okay, somebody threw a rock at me. I'm going home.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
that's the spirit.
Yeah, I understand. But a rock that big, that's amazing. That's oh my gosh, you know. I know people do that. We dismiss things like that and we let it pass, and for some reason we just let it go. A lot of times people have an encounter and they'll go home and they'll completely forget about it, and later on they think about it and then they say, I think I'm gonna tell someone about this. But it's how in the heck do people have the capacity to have something like that happen and then just dismiss it, and hold on to it for that long? But if
we had talked about retiring and moving to that area. That's how much we liked it down there. Well, I should say loved it. We were looking for property down there. We wanted to retire and move there. But when that happened, that all ceased.
Yeah.
We don't go down there anymore. We don't go fishing down there anymore. And the thing is when I was growing up going fishing with my dad didn't like for us to camp anywhere near other people. He always wanted us to be away from people. Right. I guess he felt safer that way. I don't know. So I always grew up camping away from, I'd go to the other end of the park or, get away from people. That's why I was raised to camp, just, get away from everybody.
Right.
I'm the opposite now. We have a big fifth wheel. We have it at a lake just south of around the Dallas area.
Yeah.
We have in an RV park with other people.
Right.
I don't go off by myself anymore, and when I fish now, I'm not off by myself. Or me and my husband off on a river like we used to do all the time. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's all because of this experience.
Yeah.
My husband used to say, I would tell him something that's strange that happened out here, and he'd say, don't tell anybody that because you'll lose credibility.
Right.
And that just didn't make sense to me because I thought if something happened, why wouldn't you tell anybody? And he said, well, you don't want to tell anybody because you'll lose credibility.
Right.
Well, it's really ironic because since this has happened, as soon as, we'll be fishing with a bunch of people on the dock where we fish now, and inevitably, guess who it is that brings up the subject?
Yeah.
My husband. He will bring it up, and I'll look at him and say, you going to tell him? He says, yeah, I'm going to tell him. Next thing I know, he's telling him. I said, what happened to credibility?
Yeah, more people share these days.
We got down in there, we're seeing these hunting stands, and I start asking again, where is the deer? And every time we drive down there, I'm about to sneeze. We look around and we're like, where are the deer? And finally, about a month ago, we were at the campfire with the park manager where our camper is now. And we sometimes would ask him, how come there's deer stands but no deer? We never see any deer. And we finally, probably about midnight, we finally told that man what happened. And I'll say his name is John. And I said, John, you remember I used to ask you all the time, where are the deer? And he said, yeah, I remember. He said, I always thought that was weird. You kept asking me about the deer. And I said, that's why. That's why I keep asking you, where are the deer? Because I hear about people hitting deer, but they're always on the south end of that lake, but not on the north end.
Right.
And I'll see a deer stand, and usually when you're driving back to camp at dusk, you will see at least one deer standing on the pasture. I'm not seeing any deer. I'm not seeing wildlife. And I'm still spooked about that, because once this happens to you, then you start paying attention.
Yeah, that's true.
Anybody that is listening to this, if you go into an area, I don't care if it's fishing or what, and there's supposed to be lots of deer around, or you're used to seeing lots of deer in there, start paying attention. There's a reason those deer are gone.
Right.
And if somebody's saying, if you want to find a Bigfoot, go to where all the deer are. If there's lots of deer there, you're going to find a Bigfoot. You got it wrong.
Right,
They're gone.
Yeah, the deer aren't going to stay where the Bigfoot lives. So wherever the Squatch is living, then the deer are going to scoot out away, and they have to travel to go do their hunting. I don't know how far, but they definitely don't stay where the Squatch are. But anyway, your story is very fascinating, and I want you to tell your husband, if he wants to come share too, I would be more than willing to take his encounter too, and I'll take both of you all together and use it in a new video about the infrasound and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's the one that felt it. I was in the truck. I didn't feel that. I just heard it.
Yeah. So if he wants to share, then he can come on and tell what happened and his version of what happened, and then I will take clips from your talking and clips from him telling, and I'll put it in infrasound video on Bigfoot, and this video will be its own video of you telling the story. But I would like to get him telling it too, because it would be nice to have clips from you and him. So I really appreciate you coming on and telling this and sharing the information. I think you really shared a lot of good stuff too about paying attention to the wildlife, because that's a clue, Yeah.
And I just want to say, for the people out there that don't believe in Bigfoot and laugh at it, it really, take it from me, those things are out there. The government knows they're out there. The game wardens know they're out there. That game warden knew that thing was there.
Yes.
And instead of warning us, he just asked us how long we were going to be there.
Yeah, I interviewed Mark.
Really are out there.
I interviewed Mark Zagsby here a few videos back from Crypto Reality. He does a little show of his own. Kind of like a reality show, but he basically goes out and gets footage and things like that down in Florida, because he had some Bigfoot encounters down there himself. But one of the encounters that his son had, and he was with his son when his son saw this, they went to report it to the wildlife management biologists that worked there at that state park. And when the person gets on the radio and calls for basically the main biologist person to come to the office so he could tell him, when she got there, she didn't ask, what did you see? She said, where did you see it?
Wow. Yeah.
that was a huge clue to him, and he started researching. And then they started really asking, "What are you doing here? What and trying to push them out from doing any research on the Bigfoot there." And they had some trouble with that for a while, so they started going in another way to the park there. Another entrance that it's not really the public entrance. So, and anyway, Mark Zaxby, he's got a really cool channel called Crypto Reality, and he's got some good pictures and footage too of these creatures hiding in the bushes and face shots, stuff like that. But anyway, Sarah, I really appreciate you coming on. So thank you very much. You have my email. If you hear any more stuff, please email me and ask your husband if he would email me a time when he could talk, and I would love to record his account firsthand too, and add that to another documentary thing that I'm going to be doing. And so be blessed, and thank you very much. And we'll talk to you later. If you hear any good stories down there from other people when you're talking and stuff, if you feel like it's okay to ask them if they would want to come share their story here on Brent and Son Mysteries to Search, I would be sure grateful if you feel like it's appropriate to ask, and let them know they can remain anonymous and all that.
My only other question is, and I would throw this out there, is that I know they exist. How come the government won't admit it? Why will they not come out and admit it, that they're out there?
Yeah,
secret.
Yeah, that's a big question, and there's different answers for that people have come up with. But I really think that the proper answer for it is that they don't want to panic the public. They don't want to make people not want to go to the state parks and things like that. So I believe that the Finding Bigfoot shows and people sharing like you're doing now and others that have come forward, once the public is convinced, then the government will admit what they know. And I really thought about it that way when I heard a woman who is a wildlife biologist, a person who works for on government projects and things like that, and she's a behavioral scientist, and she was on Bigfoot Outlaw Radio actually, so you can go there and listen. And I think he put something about government in the title, but she gives an explanation in part 2, I think, and I think her explanations are very good. So I really, the public is going to have to say, yes, we believe that this is true. And then she thinks that the government would come forth then and say, oh, yeah, we agree. And, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Couldn't you imagine, though, if the government came forth and said, Bigfoot are real, people come up missing sometimes, and it's Bigfoot that's doing it. What would happen? It would be a pretty big ordeal in this country, don't you think?
Yeah, it probably would be. Sometimes we wonder maybe if it has anything to do with logging, or maybe they're just afraid of what it would do to the economy in an area, or maybe they'd be afraid of people going out there hunting and trying to get one and getting killed or something. I don't know.
Yeah, all those things probably are logical.
If it's there, I would rather just be told, so that way, I could have just been prepared or left.
Right. Yeah.
Because what if that thing had come on in?
Oh yeah.
Hypothetically, it could have killed both of us.
Yeah.
Thrown us in that river. And the authorities, if they found our bodies, would have just said, well, they drowned. Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff does happen, and it gets covered up. Matter of fact, in the video I was telling you about, the Mark Zaxby interview, while he was there doing Bigfoot research, there was 2 campers that were on separate campsites at that state park that came up missing. They found one of them, and he was asking the authorities that were there searching, and they wouldn't say how he died. He asked him, how did that one die? What happened? They wouldn't tell him. And then the other guy was still missing. They never did find him. And he said that it never was in the news. He would check the news every day diligently, and it was never reported. So it was covered up by the park officials because it falls under federal jurisdiction when it belongs to the government, you know. So it's very interesting stuff, that's for sure.
I don't want to be their collateral damage.
I agree. It's quite a dilemma. It would be the right thing, I guess, morally, to tell people what you know. But economically, there would be a lot of repercussions, and the state parks make huge amounts of money also, every year with vacationers and things like that. But people come up missing, so that's the reason I think that people should know is that they can be prepared. Don't go out in the woods alone. Don't wear certain colors. Certain colors make, like bears, I think, attack blue. Blue triggers a bear. So there's certain things that a person could do to remain safer and not be one of those statistics that come up missing in the state parks, because huge numbers of people come up missing from these national parks, and it's covered up. It's crazy.
Like David's body, the 411, exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's just such a intriguing story when David Pilates come up with writing these books out of just coincidence. Someone from the Park Services coming and telling him, look into this. There's something to this, and giving him a hint. So I'm thankful to him. He's done a tremendous service to help people who know about it, to make sure you're not alone, and there's certain things that you can do to be a little safer when you go out in the woods. And
don't let your children just run wherever, here and there, when you're out in the country, you're out in the state park or something.
Amen.
Because these things can just take off with them, and they're gone. You never see them again. I've read a lot of stories after this happens to you. You start studying and looking and learning more about this.
Yes.
It's not like you got interested in Bigfoot and went found one. You ran into a Bigfoot, then you got interested and started reading up about it.
Yeah.
And then you start finding out all this stuff that, hey, there's something going on out there.
Yes, there is. That's for sure. Well, anyway, Sherry, we're running out of time here for what I can get on one upload. So you've got my email. Email me anytime you want to, and like I said, if you run across any good story, you can suggest sharing here, because sharing is very important because people collect this information and they can be better prepared and learn things. What you have shared today about paying attention to the wildlife, I believe, is very important. So thank you for being on the show, and we'll talk to you later, and hopefully I'll talk to your husband, and be blessed, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. And everybody out there in YouTube land, I really appreciate you watching today. If you have any kind of story that you want to share, contact me at brentonson@gmail.com, and I will get back to you promptly, and hopefully we can have you on to tell your story. All righty. God bless, and bye-bye.